The ego. We're all aware of what that means, even with the silly memes that we see. One thing that people have a serious misconception about it, people can usually identify egotistical behavior or identify when somebody is completely driven by said egotistical behavior or their ego in general. Even some fans of psychology today would be familiar with Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud's basic psychoanalysis about the ego and the super ID, and then, yeah. The one thing that people are missing in the quote-unquote enlightened spiritual movement is everybody says to condemn your ego. No. The ego is a part of the whole in general. As a matter of fact, what it's referencing is for you to be real with yourself. Don't let your ego blind you, is what it is. Like, for example, Matt was talking to me yesterday, and we were kind of joking about stuff, and then he said something like, a lot of girls are bi, and I'm like, well, I'm not bi, and he's like, well, you are bipolar. I'm like, is that a Gemini rising joke? Because I'm not bipolar, but yes, I do give off bipolar vibes sometimes, depending, because I can switch, my attitude can switch really quick, hence the Gemini rising. It's not necessarily a flattering thing to emphasize on, but it's something to be realistic about, because I do have pride in myself. I was kind of like, hey, like, that's fucked up for a second, and then I was like, well, no, it's true. Having that realistic discernment is the real essence of casting aside your ego. It's not about saying, oh, I'm worthless, oh, I should give to everybody else, I'm going to go completely Jesus Piscean with this, I don't matter, it's everything else, the universe that only matters. That's a very unhealthy mental state to have, because then you don't govern your own life. And that's just something that people need to be aware of with the whole ego thing. And then another thing, I said something about how, oh, I barely do anything. And then he goes, is that a Libra joke? Because Libras are, one of the, archetypal behaviors is that they're lazy. And does that make me feel good that I'm lazy sometimes? Not necessarily, but it's very important for me to be realistic with myself. And again, that is a great example of casting aside your ego and being aware, self-aware. Because the ego is one of the stumbling blocks to self-awareness. And that's what the spiritual movement, that's what the underlying occult meaning of casting aside your ego or rejecting the ego. If you reject the ego, you're rejecting a part of who you are. That's not going to help you with wholeness and unity. You need to be able to discern when your ego is part of the stumbling block. That's all it is. Because self-awareness is the key. That leads to transcendence. That leads to acceptance. That leads to peace. That reciprocates outward. Do you see what I'm saying? So that was just something I needed to rant on when I was randomly seeing more continuous monotonous memes about, oh, my ego or my spirit's so hot or something like that. I'm just like, oh my God, please. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just trying to be constructive with the headache that I'm getting from that. I hope you enjoyed this. Subscribe to my Plutonian Confessions Instagram. Or check out my upcoming podcast, Plutonian Confessions. And other than that, yeah, that's all I got. Oh, Twitter, yeah. At Ms. Nostradamus. You can hit me up on there too. If you got something you want me to rant about, some sort of topic you want to bring up, let's talk.